He fought every round of his life with unshakable courage. But in the final moments, Shigetoshi Kotari faced a battle no one saw coming. On August 8th, the Japanese boxing world was stunned by the news that Kotari, one of the nation's most promising fighters, had died. He was just 27 years old. Known for his lightning footwork, explosive combinations, and a tactical mind far beyond his years, Kotari was more than a contender. He was a rising symbol of Japan's boxing future. His last fight now feels like a haunting memory. In the ring, he was precise and relentless, pressing forward with a calm intensity that could break even the most experienced opponents. Fans remember the way he stood in the corner before the opening bell, eyes locked, breathing steady, as if he already knew the outcome. That confidence was not arrogance. It was belief in his training, in his discipline, and in the sacrifices that had brought him there. But outside the ropes, Kotari was quiet, almost reserved. He rarely spoke about his personal life, preferring to let his fists tell the story. Those who trained alongside him describe a man obsessed with improvement, always arriving first at the gym and leaving last. His coaches often said that he had the discipline of a world champion long before the belts would come. In recent years, he had begun to attract international attention, with whispers of future title shots and potential matchups against some of the biggest names in the sport. His style combined traditional Japanese precision with a modern, aggressive rhythm that made him unpredictable and dangerous. Many believed he was destined to stand among the greats. Now the silence left in his absence is deafening. The gloves hang still. The gym where he trained is filled with flowers and handwritten notes from fans who never met him, but who felt like they knew him. One message reads, "You taught us that the fight is never over until the last bell. Thank you." Shigetoshi Kotari's story is not just about wins and losses. It is about the spirit of a fighter who carried his dreams, and the dreams of a nation, into every round. The question now is not just how he died, but what he left behind in the hearts of those who watched him fight. To understand Shigetoshi Kotari, you have to picture the Japanese boxing scene in the last decade, a mix of traditional discipline and modern ambition, where fighters train not only to win, but to embody the spirit of Bushido in the ring. Born in Kanagawa Prefecture, Kotari grew up in a society that values precision, respect, and perseverance. From a young age, these values shaped the way he approached both life and sport. Boxing in Japan carries its own identity. Unlike some countries where fighters are celebrated for flamboyance, Japanese boxing champions often earn their place through humility, consistency, and a relentless work ethic. Kotari was a perfect reflection of that culture. He entered the sport as a teenager, inspired by legendary champions like Naoya Inoue, but determined to carve his own path. Training in local gyms that echoed with the rhythmic sound of jump ropes and the sharp crack of mitts, Kotari quickly stood out. His movements were precise, economical, and calculated. He approached sparring as a chess match, reading his opponent's rhythm, adjusting angles, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Coaches noted his ability to remain calm even under heavy fire, a skill rare for someone so young. As he progressed through the amateur ranks, his discipline paid off. Kotari's record began to draw attention from both domestic and international promoters. His transition to the professional stage was seamless, marked by a string of victories that showcased not only power, but also a refined technical style. His footwork was light yet purposeful, his jab a measuring tool that set up devastating combinations. The Japanese boxing community began to see him as more than just another contender. He represented a bridge between tradition and evolution, respecting the fundamentals while embracing a modern, aggressive tempo. He was polite in interviews, often downplaying his victories, but inside the ring, he fought with an intensity that left little doubt about his ambitions. By 2023, Kotari was entering his prime. His fights began drawing larger audiences. Fans admired his ability to adapt mid-bout, turning what seemed like close contests into decisive wins. His style frustrated some opponents, who found themselves unable to break through his guard or predict his counters. The theme that runs through Kotari's life is one of balance, between humility and hunger, tradition and innovation, quiet focus and explosive execution. He was a fighter who understood that boxing was not simply about throwing punches, but about mastering the mental and emotional game. Tragically, just as the international boxing world was starting to look his way, Kotari's journey was cut short. His death not only shocked fans, but also left a hole in Japan's sporting landscape. In the gyms where he trained, his presence is still felt, in the way young fighters mimic his stance, in the way his old sparring partners recall his precision, in the quiet nods of respect whenever his name is mentioned. His story is a reminder that in boxing, as in life, greatness is not measured only by titles or belts, but by the imprint a fighter leaves on those who watch, learn, and carry the spirit forward. Shigetoshi Kotari's rise was built on patience and precision, qualities that set him apart in a sport often dominated by explosive personalities and aggressive promotion. From his earliest amateur bouts, he was known not for wild knockouts, but for controlling the pace of a fight, reading his opponent, and dismantling their game plan one calculated move at a time. His early career began in small Tokyo and Kanagawa gyms, where he fought in crowded halls lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. The rings were worn, the crowds intimate, but for Kotari, every bout was a step toward mastery. He studied his opponents relentlessly, often watching tapes deep into the night and jotting down notes about their habits, how they reacted to pressure, how they covered up after missing a punch, how they reset their stance. His professional debut was a quiet affair, attended mostly by friends, family, and local fight enthusiasts. But in the ring, he was anything but quiet. He fought with surgical accuracy, landing clean combinations and moving before his opponent could answer back. The decision was unanimous, and while it did not make headlines, it marked the beginning of a winning streak that would define his early years. With each fight, Kotari's style became sharper. He was a master of distance, able to stay just out of reach while making his opponents feel like they were constantly about to land. When they overcommitted, he made them pay with counters that were as precise as they were punishing. Trainers compared his ring IQ to seasoned veterans. Commentators began calling him the chess player for the way he seemed to think 3 moves ahead. His breakthrough moment came during a televised match against a favored national contender. The opening rounds were tense, with Kotari maintaining a cautious approach. But in the 5th round, he saw the opening he had been waiting for, a slight drop in his opponent's lead hand after throwing a jab. Kotari stepped in, feinted low, and delivered a lightning-quick right hook that sent his opponent staggering. From that moment, the fight was his. The win elevated his profile, and for the first time, fans across Japan began to take notice. As his reputation grew, so did the stakes. Kotari began fighting in larger venues, under brighter lights, against more seasoned opposition. Each time, he adapted. Against brawlers, he became elusive, making them miss and pay. Against technicians, he increased his tempo, breaking their rhythm. His adaptability became his greatest weapon. But the demands of success were relentless. Training camps stretched for months. Media obligations grew. The pressure to remain undefeated began to weigh heavily, though he rarely spoke of it. Friends noticed he became quieter outside the gym, more introspective, often lost in thought even during celebrations. In one candid moment after a hard-fought win, Kotari was overheard telling a teammate, "I am always fighting 2 opponents, the man in front of me and the one in my head." It was a rare glimpse into the mental battle that accompanied his physical achievements. By 2024, Kotari was on the brink of breaking into the international scene. Talks of fighting abroad were in motion. Promoters envisioned him as the next great Japanese export, a fighter who could bring both skill and dignity to the global stage. He trained with a new intensity, aware that every bout could be the one that defined his career. Then came what would be his final fight. It was a clinical performance, the kind that left analysts praising his composure and technique. But in hindsight, some saw something else, a certain heaviness in his expression, a reluctance to celebrate the victory with the usual energy. When asked about his future, he smiled politely and said, "I will keep fighting. There is more to do." No one could have predicted that only months later, his journey would end. His sudden passing left the boxing community stunned, struggling to reconcile the image of the disciplined, focused warrior in the ring with the man who had been fighting unseen battles outside it. Shigetoshi Kotari's rise was not a meteoric leap, but a steady climb, built on discipline, intelligence, and an unshakable belief in the art of boxing. It is this slow, deliberate ascent that makes his absence all the more difficult to bear, because it felt as though his greatest rounds were still ahead. In the weeks leading up to August 8th, there were no public signs that Shigetoshi Kotari was nearing the end of his fight. He trained as usual, kept his commitments, and maintained the quiet, disciplined image that fans had come to admire. But those closest to him later revealed that behind his calm demeanor, Kotari had been carrying a weight that no amount of physical training could lift. The official statement confirmed what many had feared but could hardly believe. His death was ruled as suicide. For a man so young, so talented, and seemingly in control of his destiny, the news sent shockwaves far beyond Japan's boxing community. It forced a painful question. How could someone who appeared so strong be struggling so deeply in silence? Close friends and gym mates began to piece together moments that now seemed heavy with meaning. Times when Kotari stayed longer than necessary in the gym, not to train, but to sit alone with his thoughts. Times when he deflected questions about his future with a smile and a simple, "We'll see." Times when he seemed to be somewhere far away, even while surrounded by people who respected and admired him. One sparring partner shared a conversation they had only weeks before his passing. He told me that fighting in the ring was simple compared to fighting outside of it. In the ring, you know the rules, you know your opponent. Outside, you don't even know what you're up against. Kotari had always been intensely private. He avoided the celebrity trappings that often come with a successful sports career. He did not post much on social media and preferred to let his achievements speak for themselves. This quiet approach made it harder for those around him to see the cracks forming. When news of his death broke, the reaction was immediate and raw. Fellow fighters, trainers, and promoters expressed their grief publicly. The Japanese Boxing Commission released a statement calling him a bright star whose light was taken far too soon. Fans left flowers, gloves, and handwritten notes outside his home gym. Some of the messages were from young fighters who credited him as their inspiration to step into the ring. International tributes followed. Boxing legends and sports commentators from around the world spoke about his potential, his discipline, and the unique intelligence he brought to the sport. Many also used the moment to highlight the importance of mental health in athletics, calling for greater support systems for fighters who, like Kotari, often carry their struggles alone. One of the most emotional tributes came from his coach, who had trained him since his early teens. Fighting back tears, he said, "He was more than a fighter. He was a good man. He listened more than he spoke. He worked harder than anyone. And he cared for his teammates like family. I wish he had let us fight this last fight with him." The contrast between Kotari's public image and his private reality is what makes his story so heartbreaking. In the ring, he embodied control, precision, and resilience. Outside it, he was facing an opponent that offered no clear strategy, no bell to signal the end of a round, and no corner to retreat to for guidance. In death, Shigetoshi Kotari has left a legacy that goes beyond his victories. His story has opened a wider conversation about the unseen battles athletes face, the pressures of public expectation, and the cultural barriers that sometimes prevent people from seeking help. And for those who knew him personally, the loss is not defined by the tragic way he left, but by the way he lived, honorably, quietly, and with a relentless dedication to his craft. At Legends and Secrets, we have told the stories of champions who stood in the spotlight and those who fought in the shadows. Shigetoshi Kotari's story is one of the most sobering reminders that even the strongest warriors can be carrying battles no one sees. Kotari was more than a talented boxer. He was a craftsman of the sport, someone who treated every training session as a chance to refine, to perfect, to push just a little further. He represented a rare combination of intelligence, humility, and ferocity. In an era where sports figures are often defined by their public personas, Kotari's quiet dedication set him apart. His fights were not chaotic brawls, but carefully constructed works of strategy. He understood the science of boxing and the psychology of competition. He could dismantle an opponent's rhythm with the same precision that others might throw a knockout punch. Watching him fight was to watch the art form in motion, patient, deliberate, and exact. But his story also forces us to face a difficult truth. Public discipline and private struggle can exist side by side, and success does not guarantee peace. Kotari's passing is not just a loss for Japanese boxing, but a loss for every fan who admired the grace and commitment he brought to his craft. It is also a call to recognize that the battles outside the ring can be as dangerous, if not more so, than those within it. We believe Kotari's legacy should not be defined solely by the circumstances of his death. Instead, it should honor the way he approached life and sport, with respect, focus, and an unwavering desire to improve. His journey offers inspiration to young fighters, not just in skill, but in the value of discipline and the quiet dignity of doing the work without demanding the spotlight. At the same time, his story challenges us to look deeper, to pay attention to the people around us, even those who seem strongest. It reminds us that asking for help is not weakness, and that a fighter's spirit should be supported in every arena, not just the one with ropes and judges. Now we ask you, what will you remember most about Shigetoshi Kotari? Will it be the way he moved in the ring, light on his feet yet anchored in purpose? Will it be the calm intensity in his eyes as he waited for the opening bell? Or will it be the message his life leaves behind, that strength is not only about enduring, but about finding ways to keep going when the fight is invisible? His story is over, but the lessons remain. And perhaps that is the most powerful victory of all. Some fighters are remembered for the titles they won. Others are remembered for the way they made people feel. Shigetoshi Kotari belongs to the second kind. He was a boxer in the purest sense, not only in skill, but in spirit. Every step he took into the ring carried the weight of discipline, respect, and quiet determination. He did not fight for show. He fought for the love of the craft, for the thrill of a perfect counterpunch, for the silent satisfaction of knowing he had given his all. Now his gloves rest, but his presence lingers. In gyms across Japan, young fighters shadowbox in front of mirrors, imitating his stance, his measured guard, his effortless pivots. They may never meet him, but they are still learning from him. Kotari's story is not defined by statistics or highlight reels. It is defined by moments. The way he touched gloves with every opponent, no matter how fierce the match. The way he bowed to the crowd, even in defeat. The way he stayed after training to help a less experienced fighter perfect a combination. Those who knew him will remember his quiet humor, the way he could smile without words, the way his presence could steady a room. Those who only watched him will remember the poise, the patience, the flashes of brilliance when a fight suddenly turned in his favor. His passing leaves an emptiness that cannot be filled, but it also leaves a lesson, that even the strongest need support, that the battles we cannot see are just as real as the ones fought in the ring. That compassion is as essential as courage. Some stories are never told, but now you know. Shigetoshi Kotari will live on in every fighter who values discipline over showmanship, in every trainer who teaches patience before power, in every fan who understands that the true measure of a champion is not just in victory, but in the way they carry themselves through every round of life. This was Shigetoshi Kotari. And though the final bell has rung, his fight will never truly be over.